I always love to embarrass Ed Rollins when he's here because I think, for my money, he's one of the brightest political minds of the last century. And it's great to get his read on things, not only as the guy who helped get Ronald Reagan elected President of the United States, but provided valuable counsel to the Gipper. And we were just talking about all these developments and cross currents on health care and whether they're going to be able to proceed. And what Chuck Grassley was just saying about whether the President of the United States has disrupted this, maybe with this obsession about the Attorney General. The former Reagan campaign manager, Ed Rollins, with us. Ed, what do you think?
In my sense, Sessions is a very popular person among his peer group. He was there for 25 years. He was chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Right.
She just had Chuck Grassley on, who's now the chairman. And there's a colleague situation there. And Sessions went out early on, supported Trump, was the first senator to support him, first major player to support him. And I think to a certain extent, most people don't think he's done anything wrong. The other side of that is a president, especially a new president, always thinks his cabinet is his staff and that they should be able to do anything that he tells them to do. Obviously,
it's very different with the Attorney General.
Very different with the Attorney General. And obviously the Achilles heel of this administration, or the biggest distraction right now, is the Mueller investigation, which they don't have no control over. And at the end of the day, I think he wishes Sessions had stayed there and had taken charge of it or what have you.
All right. We're monitoring. We're not going to go to Adam Schiff talking about the Kushner investigation. Sure. But I want to get your take here because this guy, I think, has done 188 interviews with various media shifts, so it might be political in nature. But I would want to get your sense of where all of this is going, because I think with the Jeff Sessions thing, and I'll obviously defer to you, Ed, I think that this crossed into an area of perceived loyalty. Now, the president's perfectly within his rights to be concerned about an attorney general he's convinced undermined the administration's efforts by recusing himself, even though legal scholars say he was right to do that, in fact, legally and morally bound to do that, but that it still chases the president and he's hanging him out to dry.
Well, it's, you know, I don't think the president will fire Sessions. That's not his style. But he may make his life miserable. And every day, if you get up and you're the Attorney General and you basically want to serve a president and serve an agency well, and you're getting these tweets saying, you know, he's sort of depict losing confidence, I think the effort...
Why doesn't he quit then?
Well, he may, and that may be the ultimate solution.
But then he could alienate the very little club you talked about.
Well, I think there's no question, just the way he's been treated. The mere fact when the president had all the senators over there and then he talked that afternoon about Sessions sends a very loud message. And the message is, you know, Trump thinks this is his team. Each senator thinks they're an independent entity serving a state or constituency, and they are. And you have to learn to treat them that way, and you put them together on something like a health care or a tax bill or what have you. Never expect them to salute automatically because you ask for them to do that, and as you're seeing today in the big battle we're having on health care.
I just wonder if it could hurt him. I mean, loyalty is expected from the president. He's absolutely right to expect that, but it goes both ways. So when you were working with Ronald Reagan, how would he handle that? I mean, you'd always hear the stories that Nancy Reagan was the one who went after Ed Reagan and his chief of staff at the time, and that the president himself didn't like to get involved in the nasty.
No, he didn't. And the truth of the matter is, you know, I had a couple of incidents where he should have fired me and he didn't. And he was very kind to me, which makes you really very loyal to him. The critical thing here is he always had some very good friends in the Senate. His best friend was Paul Laxalt, the former governor, senator from Nevada. And he could send messages to Paul Laxalt, but usually he had a very good relationship with the Congress. He worked very hard at it.
Well, how did you get it? Were you the bad cop then? Or you relay the president is not happy?
I was the bad cop. I was allegedly the disciplinarian. Ken Duberstein was the congressional relations guy. He got to give all the good goodies. I had to go do the bad news.
In other words, if your number showed up on a phone, it was not going to go well.
Let me just say they would take my call, and I control things like, is the president going to do a fundraiser for you, or is a particular piece of legislation that you want, are you going to get it? Do you want an ambassador? Do you want a judgeship? A whole variety of things like that. So there's a lot of ways you can basically deal, but you don't have to deal publicly. And I think the critical thing here is if Sessions goes away, he's not going to go away happy. He wants to be the Attorney General. He gave up his career in the Senate, and I think at the end of the day, he could have stayed for life, certainly. Yeah. And I think he was a very important player.
But even beyond the personalities, that I'm just wondering, no one wants distractions in the middle of trying to have an uphill climb on health care or tax cuts. And maybe that's all this is for the time being, but they can't afford it. And I'm just wondering, like I've said on this air, I'm all for the president tweeting. That's what he wants to do, but tweet on message or on the things that you want.
That's absolutely correct. He's got a very large audience that follows his tweet, and it'd be much better than attacking someone, basically saying, today is a very important vote. Call your senator, call your governor back home, get him to call your senator.
Would you advise the president himself to be doing just that?
Absolutely. I think I would not say don't tweet. I'd just say don't tweet personally, and don't conflict with your message. Your message is very, very important, and you can't go out and talk about health care and basically be getting into personalities.
You know, it's pretty clear that Senator Grassley, whatever happens on this Russia thing, he thinks they're going to get something done on health care. Others have said, you know, we just have to move on to tax cuts because this is going nowhere fast. Newt Gingrich, a fan of doing that. What do you think?
I think we'll know in the next 24 hours. We'll know in a couple hours whether the votes are there.
So if this procedural effort fails, it's over?
If the procedural, it's over certainly for this year and probably through 2018. I wouldn't think they'd want to bring it up in the course of the very important election cycle. So I think today is a very important day.
Now, assuming they get it, because it's looking like they will. I could be very wrong. But, I mean, the only no vote for the time is Susan Collins. Rand Paul seems to be who would agree to this with stipulations. But let's say it proceeds. Is it your sense that the Republicans might regret what they wish for, because then they have to come up, it's going to be amendment time, Democrats and Republicans will participate in this. This could be pushed back just getting through this months, right?
Yeah, but the procedural thing is critical, otherwise it's dead. There are still 4 or 5 at least that are publicly senators who are not for this bill or for what the president is pushing. So obviously there's going to be lots of alterations. Cutting back on the Medicaid, which is the important part of this whole drill, there's so many Republican governors that basically extended this. It's a very large element. And the idea of historically you give something when you have a big piece of legislation. Obamacare gave health insurance to a lot of people. Taking things away from a piece of legislation is very tough.
Has it ever happened?
Not to my knowledge.
All right, Ed Rollins, thank you very much. Former Reagan campaign manager.